The CEO of Ford drives a Chinese car, and not as a stunt or a photo op. Jim Farley, the man who runs the second-largest American automaker, shipped a Xiaomi SU7 to his home in Chicago, and he drives it every single day. When reporters asked him about Chinese competition, he admitted that Chinese automakers already have enough factory capacity to serve the entire North American market and, in his words, put us all out of business. That warning did not come from some analyst making predictions on cable news. It came from the head of Ford Motor Company, telling you that the cars being built in China right now are good enough and cheap enough to wipe out American competition. And yet, you cannot buy a single one of them. In this video, I am going to show you why American car buyers are being shut out of the cheapest and fastest growing car market on Earth, who is actually making money off that decision, and what it means for the price of your next car and the value of the one sitting in your driveway right now. Here is the number that should bother you. The best-selling electric car in the world right now is the BYD Seagull, a real car with 4 doors and decent range that reviewers have rated well. In China, it starts at about $7,800. Not a typo, that is $7,800 for a brand new electric vehicle. Now, compare that to what you are paying. Kelley Blue Book put the average price of a new car in the United States at $47,962 as of March 2025, which means you could buy 6 BYD Seagulls for the price of one average American car. And the Seagull is not some outlier. The average electric car in China sells for around $23,000, while in America, that number lands closer to $46,000 to $48,000, roughly double. At the same time, China exported over 7 million vehicles in 2025, according to the China Association of Automobile Manufacturers, setting a new record and locking in their position as the world's largest auto exporter for 3 consecutive years. BYD alone moved 2.26 million pure electric vehicles in 2025, passing Tesla for the first time across a full calendar year. So why can you not buy any of them in the United States? Because the federal government does not want you to. And before you decide whether that is protecting you or costing you, you need to understand what is actually going on, including the part where Chinese-built cars are already parked in American driveways and most owners have no idea. If you or someone you know drives a Buick Envision, that car was built in China. Every Lincoln Nautilus produced since the 2024 model year rolled off a Chinese assembly line too. Volvo is majority-owned by a Chinese company called Geely, and that same parent company controls Polestar and Lotus. Consumer Reports tested the China-built Buick Envision and called it one of the better small SUVs in its class, and nobody complained or even noticed where it was made. GM moved over 47,000 of them in 2024 and another 41,000 in 2025. When you add up all the Chinese-assembled vehicles sold in the US across those 2 years, covering Buick, Lincoln, Polestar, and Volvo, the total comes out to roughly 170,000 cars. These are not knockoffs or junk. They are vehicles Americans bought, drove, and rated well, without realizing they were made in China. And this is where it gets interesting. The federal government just forced Polestar out of the American market, not because the cars were unsafe and not because of quality problems, but because of a new connected vehicle rule from the Commerce Department, finalized in January 2025, that bans vehicles carrying software or hardware linked to China. Polestar is exiting the US starting with the 2027 model year. But here is the thing. Volvo, which is owned by the exact same Chinese parent company, received an exemption and can keep selling here. Same Chinese owner, different outcome. If that does not tell you this fight is about politics as much as safety, nothing will. Now, you might be thinking that cheap cars from China probably means garbage quality. And 10 years ago, you would have been right. But the company behind that $7,800 Seagull is not some fly-by-night operation. And the reason is simple. BYD was founded in 1995 by a chemist named Wang Chuanfu, who started out making rechargeable batteries. He bought a small car company in 2003 and began building vehicles. Warren Buffett's partner Charlie Munger looked at Wang and called him a combination of Thomas Edison and Jack Welch. Berkshire Hathaway put $230 million into BYD back in 2008, and when they sold that stake in September 2025, their return landed at roughly 3,890%. That is not a meme stock or a lucky bet. It is one of the most successful investments Berkshire ever made. The reason BYD can sell a car for under $8,000 comes down to vertical integration. They manufacture their own batteries, and their signature product, the Blade battery, launched in 2020 and handed them a cost advantage nobody else can touch. Most automakers have to buy the single most expensive component in an electric car from an outside supplier, but BYD is the supplier. And this is where it gets worse, because it is not just a BYD story. SNE Research tracked global EV battery installations in 2025 and found that Chinese companies now control over 70% of the world's capacity. One company alone, CATL, holds 39.2% of the entire global market. Between CATL and BYD, those two firms account for 55.6% of every EV battery installed on the planet last year. That is not just a car advantage, that is a supply chain chokehold, and it is the part of this story that should concern you more than any tariff number. But if you are sitting there thinking that tariffs will keep Chinese cars out of this country forever, let me show you why that thinking carries an expiration date. Right now, Chinese electric vehicles face tariffs that stack up to somewhere between 110% and 247%, depending on which duties you count. President Biden announced a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs in May of 2024, and it took effect that September. President Trump then layered on a 25% tariff covering all imported vehicles in April of 2025. Other duties sit on top of those. On paper, that wall looks unbreakable. No car company on earth can absorb a 100+% tariff and still turn a profit. But here is the math that nobody talks about. That $7,800 Seagull, even after a full 100% tariff, would carry a price tag of around $15,600 in the United States. The cheapest new car you can buy in America right now, the Nissan Versa, sits at $18,330. Even after the tariff, the Chinese car would still cost less than the cheapest American option. Beyond the tariffs, there is a second barrier, that connected vehicle rule I mentioned, which went into effect in March 2025, bans Chinese-linked software starting with the 2027 model year and Chinese-linked hardware starting with 2030. Lael Brainerd, who served as Biden's top economic advisor, put it this way in January 2025. Connected vehicles with software and hardware systems linked to foreign adversaries could expose the American people to risks. That concern deserves serious attention. But what nobody expected was how closely this mirrors a fight America already had. In the 1970s and 1980s, people smashed Toyotas in parking lots, and politicians swore Japanese imports would destroy the American auto industry. That changed when Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, and Kia did exactly what analysts are now predicting Chinese companies will do. They built factories inside the United States and became part of the American market. BYD already opened its first plant outside Asia in Brazil in July 2025, and it is building factories in Hungary and Turkey to get around European tariffs. The company had plans for a plant in Mexico, which would have put them right on the American doorstep, but those plans were paused, and not because of American pressure. China's own government held up the approval because they worried the technology would leak to the United States. None of that stopped Chinese-built vehicles from capturing 19% of all car sales in Mexico in 2025, totaling 306,000 vehicles according to industry data. That market is already gone. What remains to be answered is how long before they find a way into ours. Here is the part that actually hits your wallet. Whether Chinese cars arrive in 2 years or 10, the pressure they are creating is already shifting what your car is worth and what you will pay for the next one. Right now, you are living in what one trade analyst described as an island of higher-priced EVs. The International Energy Agency found that two-thirds of the electric cars sold in China in 2024 cost less than a comparable gas car, while in America, EVs still run about 30% more expensive than their gas equivalents. That gap tells you exactly how much room American automakers have to charge a premium, because there is no cheaper alternative to force them down. The U.S. International Trade Commission tracked Chinese EV exports and found that the total value jumped from $295 million in 2018 to $36.7 billion in 2023. That flood of affordable cars hitting Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia is resetting what the world expects to pay for a vehicle. And that expectation will reach American buyers eventually, either through direct competition or through the used car market, as globally available Chinese vehicles push down resale values on comparable models everywhere else. Elon Musk laid it out plainly on a Tesla earnings call in January 2024, telling investors if there are no trade barriers established, they will pretty much demolish most other car companies in the world. They are extremely good. So what do you do with all of this if you are making a car buying decision right now? First, understand that the tariff wall is real, but not permanent. No tariff in American history has lasted forever. Alex Partners, the consulting firm, projects that Chinese brands will reach 33% of the global car market by 2030, but only 3% in North America. The protection is holding for now, and for now is not the same as forever. If you are buying a car you plan to keep for 3 to 5 years, the competitive situation at trade-in time could look completely different from what it looks like today. Second, if you are considering an EV, know that the battery inside it almost certainly depends on Chinese technology. Over 70% of EV battery capacity worldwide comes from Chinese companies. The Inflation Reduction Act tried to break that dependency by disqualifying vehicles with Chinese-linked battery components from the $7,500 tax credit, and in 2025, that credit was effectively ended altogether. The economics of buying an electric vehicle in America are moving fast, so check the current incentive situation before you sign anything. Third, do not assume that an American brand name means you are not buying a Chinese-built vehicle. If you are looking at a Buick Envision or a Lincoln Nautilus right now, those are assembled in China. That is not a knock on the quality. Consumer Reports rated the Envision well, but you should know what you are actually buying. The smart move is the same one it has always been. Buy based on what the car is, not where the logo comes from, but pay close attention to where the vehicle was actually built, what sits under the hood, and who controls the parts that matter most. Remember Jim Farley, the Ford CEO who drives a Chinese car home every night? He also told reporters something else that stuck with me. He said, "There is no way this is a fair fight." He is right. It is not a fair fight. What you have to decide is whether the walls America has built to keep that competition out are protecting your interests or just delaying a price correction that ends up costing you money in the meantime. 7 million cars exported in a single year, 70% of the world's EV batteries locked up by Chinese firms, and a brand new car selling for less than $8,000. That is not a future threat sitting on the horizon. That is the reality right now, today. The only thing standing between that reality and your next car purchase is a tariff that could change with the next administration. If this changed how you think about your next car, you know what to do.